All right, welcome to April 27th, 2020. It's Voice of San Diego at home. I'm Scott Lewis at home, not at Voice of San Diego's home, at my home, broadcasting, coming at you from my house. And so I've got a few new pieces of equipment. Appreciate your patience as I learn how to use it. I am looking forward. We've got a big show today. Some big stories have come out, a lot to talk about. We're going to get right into the news. All right. First up, I don't know if you saw it, but we last week got to interview one of the leaders, hardcore leaders of a crew trying to keep advocate for opening businesses here. Look at this guy right out of the black box. I kid. That is the Mayor Kevin Faulconer announcing his rules for accessing the beach. Yes, we can access the beach. It has happened. We can go surfing. We can't actually sit on the beach. You can walk on the beach. You can run on the beach. You can run into the water. You can surf, kayak, paddleboard. You can not boat, though. That was conspicuously left off of what was allowed. The mayors had previously hoped to be able to allow people to boat, but they are not allowed to boat right now. You can go. Most of the cities opened their beaches in San Diego, though a few North County cities did not. That includes Carlsbad, Del Mar, couple of others who were worried that they didn't have enough time to figure out how to handle everything. So a lot going on. We have a lot to talk about. We have a big story today about why hospitals are in trouble financially. Hold on, just double checking that everything sounds okay. Yeah, we have a big story about why hospitals are in trouble financially, and it's not because of the burdens they're facing with COVID-19, at least treating those patients. What happened with COVID-19 obviously has had an effect. So we will get to that. We also have a few other things to discuss. Let's get back into one thing, though, I wanted to go over. It was this protest in Pacific Beach. This protest in Pacific Beach. I think there's a couple of things worth explaining. So Joshua Emerson Smith from the Union Tribune was there. And I think there are a couple of conspiracy theories that were sort of coursing through this protest that I've heard a lot of questions about. I thought we should answer. There's one thing happening, which is I think that the anti-vaccine movement has started to sort of unite, as I thought it might, with some very with some other sort of strains of politics. The Trump fanatics are kind of, they've been trying to, at least in California, decide whether they're really on the anti-vax side or not. And that seems to be part of what's going on. Vaccine opponents are very worried that this is going to require vaccines and sort of, and so they're lining up already. They've obviously had a lot of trouble with the state before on this. And so I think that's a really interesting strain. And then there's the other thing happening. You might have noticed a lot of Bill Gates discussion. I've seen this. I've seen a lot of questions about that. So let's explain that really quickly. Bill Gates obviously has been almost prophetic on the pandemic that the universe or that the world would face, and he did a TED talk. He's also his foundations also support a lot of vaccine work, and there's this awful conspiracy theory going around that he actually set this in motion somehow. And you've seen some Trump supporters and others start to rally some fanatics about that. It's awful and it is unsubstantiated, but it is there. And that is partly what's happening there. And of course, very small number of people, but it got a lot of attention. It was the lead story in the Union Tribune again, which has given a lot of attention to these protests. I thought there were a couple of conspiracy theories coursing through that that were worth at least addressing and understanding people were confused about. So a lot going on there. Let's go back. A couple of other things I wanted to mention. There was some confusion this week about parks and beaches. So let's clarify what we're talking about here with parks and beaches in the city of San Diego. Parks in Chula Vista are closed. Parks in Chula Vista are closed. In the city of San Diego, neighborhood parks were opened, and they had a little bit of a confusing message on there. They kept saying that, well, you can use it for passive use. You can use these parks. And so they define that as walking, jogging, and hiking. They left out sitting there, and there were a lot of people who were sitting in parks who got warnings from law enforcement and from other park staffing saying, hey, you can't sit. You can't sit. You need to get up and get going. The mayor's office, though, this weekend clarified that you can indeed sit in these parks. You just can't congregate. And so what they were doing is, I think they used a bureaucratic definition of passive and active. They were identifying active use as like a soccer game, a birthday party, some of the other things we are traditionally using parks for, and then they defined, and so they said you can't do that. You can only do passive use, which is like your individual self or your family walking, hiking, jogging, or now sitting. So you can sit in parks. But there were other confusing points as well. They said no dog parks, but I don't know about you, but I've seen plenty of dog people. I've seen plenty of people with their dogs at dog parks and dog parks that can be closed that aren't closed right now. So I'm a little confused on that. Nobody also clarified something about the beaches I was interested in, which is, can you surf from the beaches as long as you like walk back and forth? And I think you can. What you can't do is lay out on the beach. You cannot sit on the beach. You can't congregate at the beach. You can't play volleyball at the beach. You can't play soccer at the beach. You can only walk or run past the beach. Or you can surf, kayak, and otherwise, enjoy swim in the ocean. Can't swim in the bays, though. Cannot swim in the bays. You got it? This is going to be a hard one, I think, for people to understand, but I've mostly been proud of San Diego. There were a couple of pictures this morning of some crowded surf breaks. There was a picture of Pacific Beach, I think in the Tourmaline area, with a ton of heads in the water. Now, I think those side views of those beaches are misleading. Like if you take a side view of a large space like a beach and there's a bunch of people walking, it looks like they're crowded in there. But if you did an overhead view, it would look a lot different. I think that same case, there was a few heads in the water in that PV shot. I followed all the surf cams this morning and did not see too many people out there. Surf wasn't great, but it was good. I had a friend text me, wanted to go surfing this morning. I said, nah, I got to work. He's actually a doctor, so he's not busy right now. We're going to get into that in a second. So yes, we have a question here. Margie Newman says, will folks get citations for violations? My understanding is that they will, but not for a while. They're going to have some leniency right now. Try not to, help people understand what's going on. If they start to see groups that cause some problems or don't react to them, then yes, they have an enforcement mechanism. You saw a few people in Encinitas protesting this weekend that did get citations, which was pretty interesting. They did not want to conform to the law enforcement recommendations as they were approached. All right, let us turn to our main story today. This is about hospitals. We just posted this at voiceofsandiego.org. Jesse Marks, Maya Sri Krishnan, big story about what is happening at some of these hospitals. So let's pull up some of the data from that. UC San Diego told them their health center has lost more than $50 million in revenue since March. Palomar Health has seen revenue losses of $800,000 per day. There's some layoffs, furloughs, a lot going on. We talked to a doctor. He was forced to cut his staff. A lot of cuts in the healthcare world right now. And why is that? Well, it's because they shut down basically everything but healthcare for COVID at some of these places. So there's a lot of emergency rooms that are counterintuitively actually quite empty right now, because people who might have gotten referred to an emergency room aren't getting referred there right now. There's fewer traffic accidents. There's a lot of people who are worried themselves about being infected with COVID-19 or the virus underneath it. And so they're not going to emergency rooms. It's quite a fascinating development in this whole situation, that there's a lot of doctors actually quite struggling. The hours are being cut at some of these hospitals, and tremendous losses as all these hospitals deal with this. So we have we also got a list of all of the healthcare hospitals in San Diego and how much they've gotten from the federal government CARES Act, the federal legislation that was meant to bail some of these things out. So everybody's asking for money. I've heard actual doctors and some of the self-employed doctors are also asking for some of these relief, because their hours are being cut and there's furloughs as well. We did hear as well that there is a protest being scheduled for some of the healthcare providers, some of the nurses that are involved in this. So a fascinating development in local healthcare as hospitals deal with some of the financial fallout of not doing anything but preparing for, well, not nothing, but non-essential sort of surgeries and these kinds of things, and then other ER visits not related to the virus are actually causing some problems. Kind of a weird question there. All right, so that's something to follow. We are going to be digging into that and following that directly. That's the kind of work our reporters do, digging in and explaining things. So we try to A, make sense of what people are saying, and then B, find out what they don't want to say. And so there were a few of these hospital spokespeople who didn't want to talk to us. Not quite sure why. They're dealing with other things. Now, let us get to our, let's pull up that dashboard of the county. The county put this up. I really always like to bring this up. So this is the data we have so far. Let's just pull the whole thing up. So you can find this. We can post the link. Actually, let's see if I can use my new technology to do that. Post that. Bada bing. Did that work? Yeah. So that is the website that that tracks all this. It's great data about what's happening to the virus, with the virus in San Diego County. You can see here we have had what seems like a spike. Their last few days, they've had some rather large numbers of reports of people getting the virus and also deaths. You can see the deaths down here. So let's dig into that a little bit more, and you can see, you can pull here and you can go to the zip code. So, 30, 50, 30, 60, all these things. What we're really, really interested in right now and doing a lot of investigative work is down here in South Bay, where we're seeing some really high numbers. Chula Vista Mayor Mary Salas is quite worried about this. And we all are as well. Some spiking going on in some of these areas. Scripps Chula Vista reported that 17% of people who were being tested for COVID-19 in their South Bay location were coming out positive. 17%, very high. UC San Diego systems have been testing everybody. They're getting about a 3% rate. So we're not quite sure why this is happening. Obviously, there's a lot of theories. A lot of people saying there's, the chief epidemiologist at the county said that there's a lot of people coming up from Tijuana who are U.S. residents for care. or U.S. citizens for care. But I think there's probably more going on as well. It's a lot easier for wealthier people to shelter in place and not get out. A lot of the people who have to keep working and have essential jobs are live in some of these areas, and often have a lot more people at home. We're digging into those issues, and we will be following that because it's such an important, if we're ever going to get out of this, we've got to see this number start to flatten, and we've got to see all of these. And again, whenever you hear somebody say, what's the big deal? Or with, we lose people a lot, deaths happen. Well, it's not just deaths. You have to sort of 10x the deaths and talk about the hospitalization. And this is the concern a lot of people have. It's a nasty bug, and just keeping people alive is a significant issue. And so we're all following that hospitalization number. As we start to head towards opening things up, this is the data that they're looking at, and we're asking for more. We're trying to get a little bit more specificity, for example, on what the per capita rates are, and also how fast they've increased over time in some of these areas. In other words, are we seeing a new spike here, or is it just catching up to some of the other areas? So that's an important thing to be following. All right, a couple of other bits of news to follow. As of Saturday night, 1,088 homeless San Diegans from other shelters and from the streets were sleeping in the convention center. Homeless service providers and the housing commission staffers and even city librarians are mobilizing to house them, to find actual homes for them. We have been talking the last few days. Go to voiceofsandiego.org. You can see some reports about one plan, which is for the City Housing Commission to lease to own some of these distressed hotels. So they're saying, like, look, we have 1,100 people, maybe 1,500 people eventually at the convention center. They need a place to stay permanently. So let's buy some of these hotels, and then we will put them in permanently there. Now, can they refurbish those hotels fast? Can they make those livable situations? And can they get those people into those hotels is a real question, because eventually they will have, I think, conventions at the convention center again. And thus, that's something that they're going to have to prepare for. They can't have people there permanently. And so a lot of people interested in what will actually happen. And I asked the mayor, so we have our podcast comes out every Friday. And on our podcast, I asked the mayor, did he consider these people now charges of the city? Like, does the city have ownership of, or sort of obligations to provide these people who are living in the convention center right now permanent housing? And he said, not yes, but also not no. Like, he said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to make sure they get into permanent housing, and he's going to try to take advantage of it. I asked how real this plan was to put them into hotels, and he said, it's real, it's happening. We've seen some concern from the left, actually, of people, wondering whether this is actually possible. But then there's other people on the left saying it should be bigger, should be getting a lot more hotels into this mix. I think the part of the basic argument is, like, building affordable housing that proved time and time again is actually quite expensive. Getting the land, all those things, and getting those things together, that is, not an easy thing to pull off. And so if you have an existing structure that you're already a lot further along on the way, can you actually convert that? The city's had a lot of trouble buying properties and converting them into things that the city can use. So let's take a couple other questions. I see Jeff here. What's Kevin going to spend on? He's talking about Mayor Kevin Faulconer. And I think what the extra cash he's talking about is the $248 million that the city found in its bank account and deposited by the federal government as part of that Recovery Act, the CARES Act, $248 million. Now, it's not. Don't be thinking of this as extra cash. I think that the city is already dealing with a $300 million budget deficit. And so $248 million doesn't even cover that. Now, the federal government has also told these cities that you cannot use this for these existing revenue shortfalls that you have. And so the mayor said, like, I don't know, we're going through the process right now trying to figure out what that can be used for. So can the city staff say, well, we had to get all these homeless folks off the street and out of these temporary shelters, and thus this is a direct impact from the COVID-19 crisis, and so we can use that money to find permanent housing for them and to pay for what we're being charged at the convention center for all the food and care that we're providing there. Does that count? Does the police officer hours enforcing the stay-at-home orders or these other things happen? Does that count? And if it counts, they can use some of that money for this budget deficit. But it's not, I don't think, quite fair to say, like, this is a bunch of extra money, unless the federal government says you cannot use that at all for any of these activities. You have to use it for extra things, which is going to sort of compound the city's financial crisis. And so I think there's a lot of discussion at City Hall right now that they can use a lot of the money for existing obligations. But as the mayor pointed out, I think correctly, you're not going to solve these giant budget holes that they're facing with sort of a one-time check. They're going to have to make some major decisions. Really interesting, this weekend we had a poll in the politics report that came out that said that labor and some left-leaning progressives are thinking about proposing a hotel room tax increase, but just for general use at the city of San Diego. So remember, just a quick lesson, if you want to raise taxes in the city of San Diego or in any city in the state for a specific purpose, like a convention center or a stadium, you have to get 50 or 66.7% of the vote, 2/3. But if you just want to raise taxes for a general increase in the funds at the government, you just want to give them more money, you only need to have a 50% plus one total. And so it looks like some progressive and labor groups are poking around at maybe, sorry, the loudest truck in the world is passing, loudest ever. So there's a lot of progressives saying we should put up a tax increase just on hotel rooms so that we can use that just for the city government and for its budget problems and needs. And so that's a fascinating development if it happens. I saw that happen. Every 2 years, they come up with this idea to do this. So we'll see how real this one is. But the last one I followed was in 2004. They tried to do something similar they did this year. They tried to raise the tax for something specific. That failed, so they went with just this general tax increase, and that failed as well. Wasn't able to get 50%. The hotel owners are very good at killing hotel room taxes. So that's just what they're good at, and it's not that hard to kill taxes. Now, would this change? One of the problems is that hotels aren't paying taxes right now. There's just a massive cratering of that revenue source. And so we will see what happens with that. Okay, finally, also from the politics report. So Andy Keats and I do the politics report every Saturday. It comes out. That is our sort of collection of different things that happen in the world of local politics. You can find it at voiceofsandiego.org under newsletters and sign up there. Love doing it. This week, I added a commentary of my own about schools. I keep seeing all these people talking about opening schools or opening the economy. Spas keep coming up. I don't know why spas keep coming up first. I love spas. I would spend all day in a spa. Who wouldn't? Every day. Can you imagine going to a spa every day? Steam and hot tub and, a little bit of little cucumber water. Fantastic. I would love that. So I got nothing against spas, but I don't understand why they're at the top of everybody's list. Unless you're living in a very exclusive world where that's the biggest concern people have. Restaurants keep coming up too. Gyms. Again, love restaurants. I love gyms. I love spas. Let's get into them. But I can't for the life of me figure out why that's at the top of, in particular, Supervisor Jim Desmond and County Supervisor Kristen Gaspar's list of things that need to get open. In my mind, I'm thinking more about occupational therapy for kids, special education services for my kids, schools, We can't have a functioning economy without functioning schools. We can't have functioning economy without functioning schools or summer day camps. And so don't talk to me about spas and restaurants and gyms. Talk to me about schools, because we don't have we don't even know how to enroll kids in next year, let alone when they might be going back to school. Schools not only provide great training for the economy, but they provide supervision for kids while we work. I'm barely holding it together. My wife's barely holding it together and still producing as she's supposed to. And so, if you want to reopen the economy, it starts, in my mind, and ends with schools. So I think that's one point I want to make. Second point was there's a lot of attention on County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher. So he obviously has, one of the really interesting things when the county announced that it was going to open beaches or allow cities to open beaches, then they said it was actually Nathan Fletcher that made that announcement. And so there were a lot of people wondering, they're kind of holding him up as the guy who is, the one to, blame or watch or like he's in charge. Let's be clear. Nathan Fletcher is one of five. He's one of five county supervisors. There are 5 county supervisors in the county of San Diego. They each represent a different part of the county. And the decision to open or allow cities to open beaches is this woman, Wilma Wooten. It's her decision. She's the public health officer. And state and county laws give this person a tremendous amount of power over these sorts of decisions. And it was her decision to allow the county, the cities in the county, to open up the beaches. And so Nathan announced it, but he's just one of 5 county supervisors. Now, to be clear, what happened is he and this guy, Greg Cox, who represents the South Bay on the county board of supervisors, they were both appointed, sort of put forward by County Supervisor Diane Jacob to be part of the subcommittee of the Board of Supervisors in charge of advising people like her on the county's response to this on behalf of the Board of Supervisors. So he actually doesn't have any specific more power than Greg Cox or the other 2 or 3 county supervisors, but he's stepped up as a kind of narrator of the county's response, and he's been a liaison with a bunch of others. And so we have a question, this pertains to it, from Mina saying, I thought the opening of beaches was supposed to be a coordinated effort. What happened to that? Well, I'll tell you what happened to that. This is really interesting how local government works. So Wilma Wooten is in charge. So San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer decided soon after this crisis, he said, I'm closing beaches because you can't handle it. You're all crowding the beaches. You're playing volleyball. Don't you understand there's a pandemic? Go home. We're closing the beaches. So he did that first, but then Wilma Wooten, again, a lot of power in this woman, Dr. Wilma Wooten, she said, no. Okay, I agree. All beaches are closed. All beaches are closed. And so that was a public health officer decision that she made. And so then later the cities came back and said, we would like to open the beaches for boating, swimming, kayaking, and surfing. And you could walk on the beach. And they had 2 phases. They said this would be the first phase. And this is the coordinated opening of beaches that Mina's talking about here. So what happened last week is Wilma Wooten decides that's okay. They can open these beaches. And they announce it on Friday or Thursday. No, Friday. They say it's okay for these cities to open their beaches. But they have to decide when to do that. So they announced that. Well, they said it's okay to open those beaches by Monday. Monday is the day you can do that. Well, a bunch of the cities that were part of that, they were expecting that this would actually happen on May 1st. And so they thought like, oh, we would have a week after this decision to be able to get our stuff together, put up new signs, teach our lifeguards what the rules were, teach our police what the rules were, all of these things. And so on Friday, they say it's okay to open Monday. So some of these cities, in particular, Carlsbad, Del Mar, and Solana Beach, I think, decided like, whoa, we can't handle just a couple of days notice to make these changes. And so they decided not to open their beaches. But the city of San Diego, Imperial Beach, these other cities said, we can handle it. Let's get them open on Monday for surfing. So that's why there was a little bit of confusion about the coordinated effort. And I think they avoided mostly what they wanted to avoid, which was like one city like Coronado or Oceanside opening up and then like surfers just crowding it, stuff like that. So I think that's what happened with that coordinated effort. Mina, I hope that answered your question. All right, any other questions before I close up for the day? Happy to take anything. Just a quick reminder, Voice of San Diego has a team of investigative journalists. We have two jobs, to explain what's happening and to find things out that people don't want us to find out about what's happening. Those are our two jobs. And so we think an explanation that complexity is a form of elitism, that if you have all these complex rules, these complex laws, these complex financing mechanisms, that's a form of elitism. It's hard for people to engage, hard for people to understand. Therefore, they don't get active in their local public agencies because of that. And so we think explanation is a form of investigative journalism. Second one, the investigative work, well, there's a lot of things that people don't want to talk about. There's a lot of public information officers. There's a lot of PR people who want to spread information right now. So we're going to let them do that, but we're going to find out the things that they don't want to reveal. All right, I have another question here. I missed it. Is Imperial Beach open for surfing? It is. The only ones that were closed or remain closed are Carlsbad and Del Mar and Solana Beach. They're still trying to figure out their new signs and stuff like that. So that is what's happening there. Again, any other follow the money? Let's see. I'm not sure what this means, but okay. Any other questions? Let me know. Again, if you are a member of Voice of San Diego, so how are we funded? We have about 3,300 donors right now, people who have donated over the last year to Voice of San Diego. And so the members of Voice, as they're called, they get to come tomorrow evening, 5:30. We're going to be hosting a special member event. So if you are a donor at Voice San Diego, you can go to voicesandiego.org and check out the events on that. We have a lot of RSVPs. We're going to have a great discussion about all of these issues. We're calling it Real Talk and Silver Lining. So there's a lot to talk about there. And so if you support the work of our investigative journalists to go out there, again, I highly recommend that. Again, if you are at all confused about what Voice San Diego does, let me just give you a quick tour. I like this handy new thing we've got for me. So Voice of San Diego obviously provides investigative journalism. Our most important thing we do is our website, of course. This is the front page of the site. Right now, we're leading with that major story about why hospitals and healthcare professionals are losing money right now. And it's not because of, specifically their treatment of the coronavirus, but mostly because they've lost that other business. We also have a story, a new video right here. I highly recommend that video. This is the people who are making these decisions. And so if you're interested in really understanding what is happening with the county of San Diego and who is making these decisions, I talked about Dr. Wilma Wooten. This is the person who I don't think a lot of people know who's making a ton of decisions right now, and this person as well. Very important. So check that out. Meet the Pandemic Decision Makers. Highly recommend that. And then there's a few other important stories. This is Lisa Halverstadt's coverage of the convention center. Really important stuff. There's some reviews here of what homeless people are experiencing at the convention center. We did get information that there were some positive tests of the coronavirus at the convention center. So how they're going to respond to that will be a very fascinating question to follow with that. And again, if you are interested in following a lot of these things, our most popular product is our morning report. It comes out every day, every weekday at 5 a.m. North County Report every Wednesday. Learning Curve is our education report every other Thursday. Politics Report every Saturday. Our summary of the week by our managing editor. She also throws her own fiery take in there. Usually Sarah Libby comes out what we learned every Sunday. Sacramento Report every Friday. Border Report every other Monday. Culture Report's on hiatus right now. We'll figure that out. Environment Report every other Monday as well. These are all of our email reports, but our main site, of course, can always just be accessed. And then every Friday, we have our podcast comes out. So that's the show I do with Andy Keats and Sarah Libby. And I've been doing this live event every Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. We also have an Instagram version on Friday. Any updates on golf yet? No golf yet. Not in the city of San Diego. Is there any movement on closing off streets to pedestrians and cyclists? No, there's not. There's more information about other cities that are doing that. And I think it's important for people to be allowed to spread out. I think opening the parks helped a lot. But no, that has not happened yet. IB will be closed due to sewage from TJ. Not always. It's a great surf spot. Has a bad, obviously, reputation because of the pollution, but it is not always closed, and a lot of surfers adore IB for various reasons. All right. Yes, got this one. Have you seen any new local election polls? As a matter of fact, this week in the politics report, so this is probably not my favorite product, but I really enjoy the politics report. We did a series. We did have some polls that left-leaning groups, the Progressive Labor Alliance, I think it's called, did. Pretty interesting stuff. They show that in District 7, the city council race in, Scott Sherman represents, that's the Tierra Santa area, the Navajo area, San Carlos. It looks like the Democrat there, Raul Campillo's looking very strong against Noli Zosa, a Republican small businessman. He's a very strong candidate, been very involved in the communities Noli Zosa has, as has Raul Campillo. That's going to be an amazing race. The other big one, though, is District 5, the San Diego City Council. But these are the two races between Republicans and Democrats. This is the most conservative district, so Rancho Bernardo area, that sort of area, been a Republican no contest, basically, the last several elections. Mark Kersey, the incumbent, he's being termed out. And so the two people running, very smart, good people, I think, both running for this. Democrat Marnie von Wilpert and Joe Leventhal are both running. They're in kind of a dead heat, 27-25. I think, in the positive for the left-leaning group, von Wilpert is pulling ahead, doing better. There's a big margin of error, but she's doing better. But in the other good sign for Leventhal, there was a third candidate in the primary, Isaac Wang, who doesn't appear to have, sent all his votes to Marnie von Wilpert. So this is going to be a dead heat. But there's a not zero chance that there could be only one Republican on the city council, probably two, but may only be one after this year's voting, which is, for those of us who have followed local politics for a long time, that is an extraordinary development. So that's how Voice San Diego works. We do a lot of investigative work. We post them on our site, but then we also have a lot of information about various updates and reports throughout the week, and then podcasts. And also on Fridays, I do the Friday Five with NBC San Diego. My daughter Ruby's been helping me a lot with that. All right. Any other questions before we go? Happy to explain anything about how things work, whether with the state, the county, or the city, or various cities in this. If you don't understand, it's just an open question. Don't understand something? If you haven't followed an issue very well, or you just hear somebody's name, you don't know who it is, I'm happy to answer that. That's a part of the value of these things. So I should probably go. I've got a few other things to do, but I really love these encounters and making sure you guys have the best information as we go through all of this together. Again, if they're going to open anything up, they should start with schools. I don't know how you have a functioning economy without schools. Okay. Thank you all for following. And again, I'll be back on Wednesday. And if you are a Voice San Diego member, I encourage you to come on board tomorrow night for our big event. I've got like 130 RSVPs. Should be very interesting. We'll have a good discussion, try to manage that well, try to learn how to do events without actually seeing people. I miss events deeply. Big part of my soul is to say hi to people and talk to people. But this will do for now. So thank you all for your support, and we will talk to you on Wednesday.